All right, standing single leg hip flexor extension bows. This is a great tool for lower body mobility, and it goes beyond just the hip flexor extension piece. So I'm going to hit on a few of those components before I start demonstrating the movement, just so you're conscious of them as you're going through the movement, so you can ultimately optimize it for yourself based on your current capabilities. So to start, we are going from one leg, so we're balancing on one leg throughout this movement. So you want to keep that in mind and keep the importance of that in mind, because when we're balancing on one leg, there is inherently stability work for our hip flexors, or excuse me, our hips, our knees, and our ankles, and ultimately the work of the muscles around those joints to help stabilize. So it's important because as you're going through this, there will be an added counterbalance balance component to bowing, and if you lose balance, you want to try to get to a place where you're conscious of what created the imbalance. Did it maybe come from the hip? Was it the knee? Did you need to bend the knee more? Did you need to get more dorsiflexion through the ankle? Did you need to push the butt back to get more counterbalance as you reach forward, etc., etc.? There's a lot of interesting nuances inside of balance and counterbalance that you should be conscious of when you're in movements like this. Now, the next piece, and really the last important piece besides the balance, is that if you bend through the knee, you'll be able to reach to the floor a little bit more easier. If you lock the knee out and keep the leg straight, you'll get more tension through your hamstrings and glutes, and ultimately more mobility work for your hamstrings and glutes, but you won't be able to go as far. So just keep that in mind, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment when I start demonstrating the movement. But keep in mind that there is a balance component, right? And there's stability work for your hips, knees, and ankles. And keep in mind that there's the capacity to bend at the knee or lock the knee out and keep the leg super straight. So with that, the movement starts with either ankle, right? Some of us will grab the ankle, or top of the foot. Some of us will grab top of the foot. You can see that's what I like to do. It's going to start with ankle or top of foot in hand. Now, in this position, if you're loose, there shouldn't be really any stretching sensations yet. What you want to do to get a stretch sensation in this position is crunch through your abs, right? Creating tension and flexing through your abs, and pointing the knee down at the floor, creating tension through your hip flexors and potentially all the way down to your quads, depending on what your current capabilities are, right? From here, you should feel a bit of a stretch sensation. To get it to a further place or to increase that stretch sensation, that's where you pull up on the foot, right? So I'm here without the hand pulling up, I'm tensed, knees pointing down, and then I pull up to further that sensation. Okay, from here, I'm pulling back, creating this counterbalance, and I'm just trying to bow towards the floor, right? You can call it a reach if you want, and if that's as far as you get, that's fine. See if you can pull to get that knee even further back, and then you stand. All right, so if that's your end range, you have something to work on. Figuring out what that counterbalance is to keep you stable the entire time, figuring out how you can get the biggest stretch through your hip flexor, and how you can maintain that as you descend closer and closer to the floor. Now, if you're talking and explaining the movement, it might be hard to reach to the floor, as it is for me right now, but I'll give it one more try just so you can see that there's a lot of counterbalance taking place. Butt pushing back, knee bending, reaching down to my toe or reaching out a little further to tap the floor and then come up. All right, now as that's happening, you might lose that tension through your hip flexor that you created at the beginning, but that is all right. There is a lot going on inside of this movement, and just concentrating and getting body aware is super valuable. Now, the other way to approach this is with the straight leg. And if you're doing that, you won't be able to go as far, so it might promote a slower movement, being more patient, and it's just another texture of counterbalance. So with my leg locked out, I've got to push my butt back, and now I feel a lot of stretching through the hamstrings and glutes, and I come up, and that's what a rep would look like with a straight leg. So I wouldn't be able to go down far at all. Finding my end range, it's more about feeling it out than giving myself a specific target, right? Can I get my knee back a little further? Can I bow further a little bit, bow a little bit more with my chest? But again, you won't have that floor as a target unless you have really well-developed end ranges with your leg locked out and you have great hamstring and glute mobility capacity. So I think that's everything inside of this mobility tool. The big thing is that there's a lot to be aware of, right? There's a lot to play with. So depending on what your function is right now, what your capacity is, you'll have to play around. But that's the whole point with some of these tools, right? Is figuring out where you end, what your end ranges are, and how you can push on them to get further and further inside of the movement, or develop the movement further and further, create more tension, etc., etc. So it's okay if you go further than me. It's okay if you don't go as far as me. It's just really using it to your advantage based on what feels optimal and just using this as a bit of a template. So anyways, enjoy this movement and enjoy implementing it in your fitness practice.